Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone attending. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we are going to cover our Tellius AI agents and agentic workflows and talk about how this is really applicable and useful for deep analysis and bridging that gap between data and your enterprise intelligence and actions. By way of introduction, my name is Chris Walker. I head our product marketing here at Tellius. I'm pleased to be joined by Vinod, who runs our product team. And we're going to walk you through our capabilities, but also put it into the context of what's happening in the LLM AI agent agentic flow space and show you how we can use our agentic flows to really 100x your productivity. So just before we get into the weeds here, this session is being recorded and we'll share around this deck as well. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we will do our best to answer those towards the end or throughout. So yeah, let's get going. Who is Tellius? What's Tellius? We are an AI native analytics platform. Our whole ethos is to use AI and augmentation to take that journey from terabytes of enterprise data to actionable insights more rapidly. And we have a number of customers across all industry verticals, pharma, CPG, tech, and more. And we've been recognized by Gartner as a 3-time visionary in the Magic Quadrant for analytics and BI platforms, or our AI augmented approach to make every bit of that journey more streamlined, rapid, and easier. So with that, let's get going. So Vinod, I'm sure you're seeing this trend, but it seems like these deep research modes are popping up everywhere. OpenAI introduced one a few months ago. Google Gemini, Grok, Anthropic, Perplexity offers one. And these deep research modes, I mean, I don't know, are you using these, Vinod?
Yeah, all the time. It's funny because I ran out of my OpenAI in the ChatGPT Plus subscription only gives you 10 deep research runs per month, which I didn't realize till I ran out of it. And then I was like, wait, what happened? But then I had to go switch to Perplexity. I keep switching between to make sure I go over my rate limits. But they're awesome, right? I mean, typically what you're doing is ask a question, you get an answer. But here you are now able to call upon these models to effectively run like a multi-agent system. Like think of a team of analysts or maybe a team of interns, very, very competent interns who can basically go research any topic you want. And they can go to multiple results. They have access to the search. So they can actually search the web, find different papers, websites, links, pull out information, coalesce. If you've seen some of these models, they'll actually show you the thinking process, right? So they can actually see what the model is thinking. So it creates a plan. Here's an analysis I need to do. And here's all the info I need to pull. Pulls out the info, looks at it, synthesizes it, sees, okay, does this answer the question? So it's actually an iterative process, not on one shot. And like the deep research on ChatGPT sometimes can take up to like 30 minutes to go run a report, and you can see the amount of work it does, right? And I think same with other tools as well. So it's so powerful, right? Some of these reports, and I think you have some examples over here where people have shown some, and I have some examples of my own, but we've seen some really good ones. Maybe you can talk to them, what people are doing here.
Yeah, I mean, people are doing all sorts of crazy things with them. People are writing, their research dissertation papers. They're getting, AI assistants to write these long form 30, 40, 50-page docs. I think there's one case of a mother who had seen something like 17 different healthcare professionals to try to diagnose her child's symptoms. And then, kind of as a last shot, she dropped them into OpenAI deep research mode. And they were actually able to identify and diagnose what her kid actually had. So it's kind of wild. It's searching hundreds of sources sometimes to get this. But as cool as this deep research mode is, if you've ever tried it to do analytics, there's a lot of areas where it falls over, unfortunately, right? So the first one, kind of looking at the left-hand side, is that it's going to, the surface level summarization, which it's culling through dozens, hundreds of documents and giving you a summarization of what those documents say. Great for research purposes, but it doesn't actually know your enterprise data structure or your business logic. It's not accessing the granular data sets. It's not able to do the multivariate analysis and the segmentation and the metrics generation and the number crunching, right? For surface level, you could upload a CSV file and you could get some exploratory, data analysis done. But for the deeper stuff, that if you're expecting the deep levels that you get from written word, it falls over for analytics. The second one here is the explainability and repeatability of it is kind of questionable. You're getting a response, not a reason, not the SQL logic or the data lineage. And then the third part is that it's not going to handle your messy data. The ability to connect, clean, transform your operational data is not really there yet. For these reasons, though, I mean, just think about the possibilities, though. If you could do deep research and analytics, what would you need? These are sort of our thoughts here. Vinod, do you want to cover any of this?
Great point, right, Chris? I think just to reiterate what you just said, the exact things that make deep research so powerful are also the things that can often be problematic when it comes to your enterprise structured data or data. So what I mean by that, right? The deep research, you're looking at a variety of different sources, bringing all this data, synthesizing, coalescing that, and then coming up with like an insight or an answer, right? But when you're doing this in your own data in the form of analytics, and when say analytics specifically, what I mean is like your enterprise data, the corporate knowledge you have. So there, you're now, let's say, asking questions that are related to your enterprise, saying that, hey, how do I improve my overall sales performance, or how to improve my territory performance for a particular category of products, or how do I decide which products are actually not doing well and we want to discontinue them, right? That's a complex question. And to do this, you need to have, for example, access to the analysis related agents. Like these agents have to know your data models. They need to know all the enterprise data sets that are available. They need to understand the business logic. How do all these data sources are connected? What is the business logic you use to define sales or metrics? Because those metrics are what you're going to make decisions on. So those KPIs have to be exactly the same. So there is no room for hallucination here, because if I make up an answer or a metric, that may be different from what you are thinking about, and that might lead to bad outcomes, right? When it comes to data and analytics in your enterprise, you need what we call symbolic AI, right? What that means is that you need context and you need accuracy. So to do this, you need to have a semantic layer that actually tells you what are all the definitions, the business rules, the business processes that you define, and those are all accurately honored by the system. So the AI needs to know the rules and apply those. To do this, there's obviously a lot of ways people have this, right? They have to build the semantic layer. You have to have like RAG, which is retrieval augmented generation. So you actually go cite your answers, ground your answers in actual data that's already in the system, not just makeup. You need to have a knowledge graph that actually connects all the data sources and the entities in the data together, so that when you ask a question, you're actually finding out the appropriate linked things. And then you need to build this all in a system that can actually explain the results, be able to, you need repeatability. This is the key point. Let's say ask a question. When you go to any of these ChatGPT or Perplexity tools, you expect slightly different answers, and that's okay. But here, there's no room for that. If I ask a question, I get an answer. The next day I ask the same question, I expect the same answer. My manager asks this question, they expect the same answer. So repeatability becomes key. And then we bring this all together for enterprise scale. What I mean by that, some enterprises will have hundreds of gigabytes, if not terabytes of data, sometimes even going to petabytes of data in their data lakes. And you can just load all this data into the LLM context. Even the largest ones are like 100K or a million tokens, right? So you need to be able to run these analysis on the data sources. So you got to push down, what we call live push down. That means that you have to make sure that you have a system that can do data pipelining on the fly, prep the data, you can make transformations, and handle all the complex calculation on this terabytes of data. So those are the sort of the big keys to doing analytic deep research, right? So the promise is there. We want to do this, but you need all these building blocks.
And just to add on that last point, I mean, if you think about the analogy of, creating images in OpenAI or any other kind of LLM, right? It generates the image, and then you can say, oh, you know what, like let me highlight this area and regenerate this section. You can't really do that for data analysis in a vanilla LLM the way you can with an enterprise data and analytics platform, right? If you need to tweak your analysis or change it in any way, it's way more efficient to do it in an actual data and analytics platform. So, but now we have these building blocks, the agents. So let's dive into those a little bit more. That's what we're here for. Let's just make sure everyone's on the same page here. This is our definition of agents. The fact that they can plan. As you see in this picture here, there's a planner agent that will kick off multiple other agents, spawn off other agents, and do the work. There's also a degree of autonomy to them. Of course, agents have tool use. So in our case with Tellius, we'll walk you through our tools, but you have all of the enterprise grade data analytics tools, the various forms of analytics, the various visualizations and summarization capabilities, and the multivariate analysis. It also has memory and reflection. Anything you want to add to that definition or explanation, Vinod?
Yeah, a great point. So this is important slide, right? You will see a lot of definitions of AI agents in the market, right? And this is true. This is an evolving space. People are still like, there's no canonical definition. People are coming up with, as they speak, as they build it. And there's no right or wrong answer. But for us, I think, and this is a consensus we see the major players also going towards, right? An agent, to define something as an agent, at least today, you need these 5 things that Chris just mentioned, right? And when it comes to analytics, analytics agents have to do on top of this. But primarily, the key is that they are effectively individual, basically autonomous AI models. These are LLM-powered applications, right? So agents are essentially, they use LLMs, but they're not just an LLM. They're not just like simple model, right? You need the LLM to do the planning. You need the LLM to have the sense of autonomy, but then you need to use tools. You need to give access to memory, and the tool itself can be the data source, and the memory itself can have all of the context, right? So a lot of those things that we saw on the previous slide all are brought into the system by each of these individual pieces. And then you need to finally have reflection, meaning that is agent can be optimized for goals. So they can say, hey, your goal is to do this, optimize for this business objective. And when you see that, you need the AI engine to be able to plan their path. How am I going to optimize for that objective? And then once I finish with the task, I'm going to be able to reflect and see, did I actually solve the problem that I set out to solve? And if not, let me go back and fix it or do something again. So that's why all these pieces are critical to be able to call an agent.
And so this is sort of our quick rundown of our Tellius AI agents and workflows. So basically, you specify your analysis goal, like the picture on the right shows. What product should I consider discontinuing? And then from there, it kicks off what we call an agentic flow, which is this in conversation pop-up that will say, hey, we have an agent for that already, a flow already. Do you want to run now? It'll ask you a few questions to clarify it, similar to the deep research modes of Perplexity in OpenAI and Gemini and all that, where it specifies, okay, which product line are you talking about? Which region, which time frame? Once it hones in a little bit on your ask, then it will actually do that work. So if LLMs are the brains, AI agents are the muscles, the arms and legs that are doing the work, and they're stepping through our various modules equipped with our various tools to then perform that action. And so that's kind of our take on the flow. We'll show you this, but high level, this is our AI agent approach. But we don't stop there, right? Being able to use and leverage AI agents, we think is something that everyone should be able to do deep analysis. But the ability to compose, to create new agents and agentic flows is part of our ethos at Tellius to democratize access to the best decision making through AI and data. So we have a no-code approach to building agentic flows. You can specify the steps that you want the system to run through, but you don't have to specify in nitty-gritty detail what you want it to do. It has that degree of autonomy to take these steps and then to turn that into reality. But anything you want to add there, or do you want to? I think the next part is to show us.
We can jump into the demo, right? So this is a great segue. So what you, like Chris mentioned, we built this entire platform with all these components. So you have the notion of the agent, you have the notion of the composer, which is the tool to create these agents in a no-code way. You have these agentic flows themselves, which are essentially those multi-step workflows that you might be executing with the help of these agents. And then you have the agent library, that is all the pre-built agents in your enterprise, or for that matter, you can share it yourself personally or through your organization. For folks who haven't seen this is you come in. So I'm going to jump into the Kaya module. Kaya is where all our conversational AI and also our agentic tooling is all going to reside. So when you come to Kaya, it looks like any other AI interface. Can ask questions of the data. You can select a business view. You can look at past popular queries. You can pick one and start running. You can also go in and open the sidebar to see all past queries. You can see that whatever you run as a team as well. I'm going to jump into the agents part, which is the new thing, right? So this is a library. So you come in, you'll see all the published agents these are my published agents, but this could be for my organization as well, right? So this, you see a bunch of these are across different use cases. There are some for e-commerce. We have some for retail. There's a CPG use case, one for NRX, which is a pharma prescriptions, pharma sales analysis. We have market access. So a lot of these, right? And we'll go through a couple of them today in the demo. But basically, you can see what pre-published agents are there. I also have my draft ones that are building. But before I do that, here's the composer. So I'm going to just jump into the composer to show you how easy it is to build an agent. So if I click compose, it gets you to this workflow where I can now define a new agentic workflow. And what I mean by that is specifically it needs a few things, right? So the agent itself, like if you remember the definition that Chris just walked us through, it needs to know what its goal is. So we give typically an agent a name, and then we also give it a description. Description is useful both for the agent to know what its goal is, but also for the end user if they want to refer back what this particular agent is supposed to do, right? So in this case, let's say we want to create essentially my sales threat analysis. So let's say I'm a sales leader for a large pharmaceutical company, and I'm an AGM. I have a territory, and I manage, let's say 20 reps that report to me who are all making calls on my behalf, right? And they're trying to increase the sales for our drug. So I can create like basically sales analysis workflow. I can give it a name saying that our goal is to increase sales for my territory and show me analysis, right? So we can basically define what it's supposed to do. Then we pick a knowledge source. So this is where you specify the business view. So business view is the data model that we want this agent to use, right? So in this case, we already have a lot of business data sets. So let's say I can pick one called Subnational Weekly, which is basically across a bunch of territories, a bunch of different products. It will pull all this data, right? And you can bring this in, and I can then specify the steps for it. And the steps are all written in natural language. Here are some examples, right? So if you want performance analysis, you might just say steps like this. You can say, hey, step one, ask the user for an input. if they input and then ask them for a time period and then the metric they care about. And based on that, you run some analysis. And as you can see, this is all written in natural language. I'm not specifying, build a chart or do some insights, run statistical models. I'm asking the model, like the agent, to do all of these things, but I'm defining this in all very simple natural language. And that's the real power of it, right? Because we want almost all end users to take advantage of it. So we try to deliberately keep the complexity very low, or at least abstract away the complexity. So behind the scenes, what we're doing is we're actually calling multiple agents. These agents are going to go to run the analysis, but you don't need to worry about all those pieces, right? So you define, so let's say you have switched to, let's say, Salesforce effectiveness, right? Same thing. Here's just a list of steps. You can see how it is doing, right? So that's how powerful it is. Let's say I pick one of these, right? I want to run this analysis. The next step is to then create a trigger. A trigger is basically you specify when do you want this workflow to run, right? So you can say that, hey, whenever someone asks for sales analysis, when someone asks this question, then I want this to trigger, right? And one nice thing you can do is before you even publish this, you can actually test it in the playground. So you open the playground and you can just, let me kick off the playground. This is basically your sort of test mode, right? You can actually see what's happening. So as you can see, as I kick off each step, first there is a supervisor, right? So you can see the steps that are right. So it's now saying that, oh, I need to ask the user. So it's actually triggering the same question. So I'm going to give it a brand, right? Let's do Anthropic. This is a popular drug. So now the supervisor says, okay, based on that, tell me, because if you see, I defined the step as input time period, right? So it's asking the same question. Is it last quarter, current quarter, last year? And then it'll ask me for the metric. And I can specify what the metric is, right? So I can say it's MBRX. MBRX is basically new to brand prescriptions, which is a key metric. You want to know if there's a new patient who's being prescribed for this drug for the first time. So that's a metric pharma companies care about a lot. And based on that, now it's actually going ahead and running an agent. It's saying, okay, I'm going to analyze the top 3 performance with a negative change, run the analysis, provide you a trend chart, right? You can see the agents in action. So this first agent that's being kicked off is this analytic agent. This is something that, it's native to Tellius, right? So it can look at your question, form the queries, run the analysis, pull the result back, create a visualization for you, and show you the chart, right? It does it all smartly. And that's what's going to run, right? And then each of those is run one by one, and you'll show the results in a minute. So in the interest of time, what I'm going to do, so here's the composer part, but I can also trigger this workflow from my user interface. So let me go ahead and show what that means. Okay, we'll do this, the NRX deep dive one. So I want to run a brand performance analysis. I'll pick a drug, and for that drug, I want to see overall performance. What that means is often the performance could be change in NRX over last 4 weeks. That will give us an immediate pulse of what's happening. Then we see what's the trend over the last 13 weeks. That'll give us, okay, what is a longer term trend, slightly longer term trend, and gives a broad quarterly perspective. You can then also jump into that brand's 13-week NRX against other key brands in the market. So you get a sense of, okay, how is this brand performing against other competitors? And we'll then try to do some analysis where we see that, okay, look at NRX by, let's say, district or territory, that we see, okay, where is the performance changing? What performance changes what is contributing to performance changes? It'll tell us whether certain districts or certain territories, are they underperforming? We can see that. And then for those particular territories, we can then look at specific deep dives to see what's happening. And finally, we'll try to see, okay, what is the total calls made by HCP? HCPs are the healthcare professionals. So we can see, are we actually calling enough of those people in those territories where we are seeing this trend of decline? And if it's not, that gives us an action plan, right? We'll run an insight at the end of it to see, okay, what is the overall trend analysis, and then we'll come up with a conclusion. So again, this typically, like deep research, it can take like a few minutes. So in the interest of time, I just ran one earlier. I'm going to just show that one. So I ask this question, run like in a brand performance analysis. It picks up the agent, runs it. So I'm asking the question, okay, which brand are you interested in exploring? So I picked this brand called Mycobutin. And then it asks me some additional clarifying questions. Do you have a specified metric you care about, or you care about NRX? So now it first ran, okay, it runs the analysis for Mycobutin over the last 4 weeks compared to the previous 4 weeks, and it gives us the absolute change. So this means that what is the change in the sales, and sales as defined by NRX, which is new to our new prescriptions by territory. So as you can see, certain territories are doing really well. They have seen absolute growth, right? So like at the top, on the left, we see territories like Austin, Green Bay, Oklahoma are doing really well. The sales has increased. And on the right, you see a bunch of territories which are declining. So these ones like Chicago West, Hartford, Columbus, a bunch of these other ones, Newark and Queens, they have declined. You can see that decline as well, right? So now it's asking me, which territory are you most interested in exploring? Obviously, I see this and saying, okay, before doing that, it also then runs the analysis. Okay, show me the last 4 weeks compared to the preceding 4 weeks. And here I have the analysis for that one. Then I see, in this case, actually, there's an increase. It increased overall 10K. So that's good news. Now I want to see absolute change by product for the last 13 weeks compared to the preceding one. I see that over here. It shows me that microbiome is actually doing well as compared to other drugs. So that's the good news. Now it looks at the last 4 weeks compared to the preceding 4 weeks and gives me the territories. So you can see which territories are declining, which ones are doing well. And then it asked me to pick a territory I want to do the analysis. So I picked the territory, Houston, which is, let's say, my territory, and I can see the total change in calls by HCPs for that territory. These are the HCP IDs. You can actually go and see each one will be corresponding to a particular healthcare professional. Certain HCPs have had a massive decline in the calls, and some ones have had higher ones. As a sales territory manager, you can actually do that and say, okay, why are we not calling these people more? Or what's happening? What's the trend decline look like, right? So that's the analysis this gives you. So now we then say, okay, let's drive an insight. An insight basically looks at all the possible factors that could be contributing to the change. So in this case, we want to see, okay, there is this minor decline. Let's look at the overall NBRX analysis. And you can see the overall, like there's a small decline, and then it says, okay, the decline is about 5.68%, but here's all the reasons. So it tells me that for a specialty, which is dermatology, I've seen a small decline. And then within that, it's saying that specific sub-departments like rheumatology has declined quite a bit. And then indication PSO has decreased, and the region East has decreased. So it drills down to multiple levels down and tells me the analysis. It also tells me other factors like, within region East, what are the factors and so on. So it gives me a bunch of analysis. This is really good, very valuable. I can see exactly where the decline is coming from. And gives me a quick summary. Overall decline seems to be primarily contributed by dermatology and rheumatology, right? These are the two departments where we're seeing the decline. Now, it uses all of these pieces to come up with a final analysis, which says, okay, now let's look at the summary of the analysis for microbiota over the last 4 weeks versus prior 4 weeks, and it shows me this whole analysis. Tells me key contributors, the positive contributors as well. Like, it's not all bad, right? Some places are doing well. We saw that Austin is doing actually really well. It tells me how Austin is performing, and it gives me an overall recommendation. It's saying that, okay, focus on the positive areas, and then decline areas, maybe look at certain reasons. And obviously here, I don't know the data. So the model doesn't know, system doesn't know what's really happening in the real world. So it can, but it, as in so much as it can see the data, it tells you those indications, tells you those answers. And this is a nice report it publishes, and you can take actions with this. Okay. I'll pause for a second, and then let me jump to another one here really quickly. I want to show you one for CPG. Okay. Chris, any questions while I'm pulling that up?
Actually, one just came in. Can I design agents in another platform and calling Tellius tool for analytics?
Great question. So today you can, but that's coming very soon. So we want to be able to support multiple agents. So the system is defined in such a way that you can actually call tools from outside and be able to pull it in. So we can totally do that in the future.
Nice. That was the one that popped up just now. And yeah, while you're pulling up the CPG one, I just wanted to kind of reiterate that this is kind of a fundamental shift in how we're interacting with information, right? I mean, rather than having that sort of search and maybe even a conversational mentality, which is definitely a move forward, and that still requires you to cull through the various data sources and documents and synthesize and extract insights. Whereas this is kind of doing the opposite. You're saying what you want it to do, and it is pulling all that for you. It is synthesizing that for you. And you saw that really robust report at the end there. Like that's very similar to kind of the deep research modes, but grounded in analytics and data, which is really cool.
Yeah. Okay. So this one, we're going to shift gears to CPG, which is consumer product goods. So within this, one of the use cases we often see customers want to do is this notion of CPG product discontinuation, right? This is actually a very complex topic. For large CPG brands, often you'll have something called portfolio bloat, meaning that you'll have a lot of different products or brands, which are all in the same category. And sometimes it's good because you are trying to take up shelf space, right? But oftentimes what will happen is these product lines expand and it'll lead to underperforming SKUs that are actually draining your resources. So you got to ask the question, okay, what should I cut? How to decide what to cut? And that's a very tough question. It requires lots of time, lots of analysis to be done. So that's why what we did is we created this product discontinuation agent. Imagine you have a tool that analyzes the data and tells you which products are truly underperforming. And this isn't just guesswork, right? It's data-driven. So what we are going to do is we're actually going to try and see which products have the highest cannibalization index. Cannibalization is when, let's say, multiple product lines in multiple brands in the same product category, right? So that means that effectively you are cannibalizing your own sales because these products are all in the same category. You also see which ones have the lowest sales velocity, meaning are there particular brands or SKUs that are actually not really selling well, they're struggling, right? And finally, you want to see which ones have poor profit margins, because you need all those three things, right? So it's a combination of, are they cannibalizing your existing other products? Are they selling slowly? And finally, do they have poor margins? The combination of all three is typically what is used to which products or which brands to or SKUs to discontinue, right? Easier said than done, right? So it's very complex. So here's some data we have from, like, let's say you're a CBG manufacturer, you have this, right? So typically the steps here look like this, right? So you want to do the analysis of all the SKUs or a particular category or price tier. And then you want to see, okay, what are the total units sold for each SKU? What is the total sales revenue for each of the SKUs? Then you want to store it as like an individual, like temporary data set, and then use that to then do some analysis, right? We want to see, okay, which ones are seeing out of stock, meaning that tells you the sales velocity, right? If they're typically out of stock for a large amount of time, that means that your sales velocity is good, right? But you want to see how you compares to average distribution for other SKUs in that criteria, right? And then use all of this to come up with basically a cannibalization index, right? And this is essentially a formula, right? We come up with like this simple formula that calculates the cannibalization index for every SKU. And typically lower is better, right? So if it's lower, that means that this product is unique, versus a higher number means that it's cannibalizing. Then finally, you try to do a cost estimation and use that to come up with a profit margin for each product. You combine all of this, and then you can run an analysis to do it, right? That's what we want to do. So which product should I consider discontinuing? This is the workflow trigger, right? So if I go in and launch an analysis, so I kick it off, and what's going to happen is the CPG product discrimination agent gets triggered, right? Says, okay, hey, I'm going to run this. I need to run this workflow. I said, let's go for it, right? So it's going to run analysis. Let's come up with the first step. Okay. All right. It wants to give us a dad joke. All right. Our team has some really poor humor, but we'll go with it. I don't. Skeletons fight each other. They don't have the guts. Classic dad joke. All right.
Oh
We
man.
got to work on this part. We are not perfect, right? All right, go ahead. All right, so now what's going, it's going to actually go pick up the supervisor agent is actually going to say, call these analytic agents, call each one of them and run the analysis. So now here, you see, it tells me that here's the whole workflow, right? The one we just saw. It's going to gather the inputs, it's going to filter the data, run some aggregation, distribution, cannibalization, cost estimation, all of those pieces. And at the end of it, you'll get a really nice report that summarizes all those pieces, right? So you say, all right, let's go ahead. Let's write. And it's going to ask me those questions. It's going to say, okay, tell me the brand, tell me the category, right? So it's asking me each of those pieces. I can specify that and do the analysis. But in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and skip to this version where we ran the same thing earlier. So, we can just look at the results. So I picked the same thing. Now, the category I picked is home care. So it says, okay, you can do by home care or brand. I could have even given it a particular brand. I said, hey, I care about Dow. So tell me for Dow. Or I could have given it a price tier. In this case, I just gave it the category. So within home category, now it's looking for all the SKUs and it's finding out what their average cannibalization score is. So here, if you remember in the previous composer interface, I showed you how we calculate the cannibalization score. So that's been computed and shown over here. Higher means more cannibalization, lower means better, right? So in this case, you can see certain products are really like high cannibalization scores. That means that they are impacting sales of other products in your portfolio, right? So now we want to do is for those, we want to actually go ahead and see which ones have the highest average cost and dollar sales. So this is a way for us to find the profit margin. Typically, if the cost is low and sales is high, that's a good thing, right? So here you can see certain products over here. This has really a high average cost and the sales is actually pretty low, right? So you might be seeing some certain trends popping up. This product may not be doing as well in terms of like for the profit margin, whereas these products are doing well. Their cost is low, but sales are pretty high, right? And then you want to see what is the average sales velocity as well. So you want three things, right? We have calibrate the sales velocity and then the profit margin. And you can see this for across all the top SKUs. We can see which ones are ranked high to low, right? You can see a good mix of it. There's no like right or wrong answer, right? So there's different trade-offs to be made. Based on that, we want to come up with an average discontinuation score, which is a combination of those three metrics we just talked about: cannibalization, sales velocity, and profit margin. And based on that, it's giving me an analysis saying that, okay, hey, based on that score, we think 1125, product SKU 1125 has the highest discontinuation score. So now let's look at that product, right? So we're saying before we make a call that, oh, let's discontinue, we want to see, is this product actually a bad one? What's going on, right? So let's do this analysis. So here we are doing what's called an insight, which is the deep dive statistical analysis. So for that particular SKU, 1125, we're going to run a trend insight. So we're going to look at the monthly sales velocity for that SKU for a time period. So here we're going to specify one time period, and we're going to run this analysis, pick the time period, and for the time period, we're going to run this analysis. So it sees that, okay, this product SKU has actually declined in sales in the last 3 months as compared to the previous time period. And you can also see why is it declining, right? So you can see that the product has maybe some issues. It's saying that the price tier, because of the price tier, it's reducing its sales. The category itself, it's in the category food and beverage. That category itself has had an impact, right? So it's not necessarily that product. The category itself is struggling a bit, right? It also says that some of the particular brands under the hood are also struggling in sales. Overall, saying the positive contributors are sales at Kroger and certain stores are high. But overall, food and beverage, mid-tier price category, they're all declining. That's why this particular SKU is not doing so well. Using that information, now we come up with this whole CPG score, and then we come up with a report which says, okay, here's our final summary. We are recommending these 5 product SKUs have high cannibalization index, low sales velocity margins, and we recommend discontinuing these products, right? So imagine this report or this kind of analysis would have taken days, if not like weeks, for analysts to look at multiple data sets, look at the charts, come up with the insights, break it down, do these calculations, and do this, right? And we did this all in a matter of minutes. And here's your full summary report, right? You give the whole summary report with the sales velocity, all those metrics. This is now available for, you can present it to an exec, right? You can put it into a nice chart, PDF if you want it, and present it as a report.
One quick question came in. Is there a special data model requirement for the agent to work? And how does the system scale up with data volume?
Yeah, great question, guys. Great news is if you are using, if you have data set up in something like Tellius, or for that matter, any data warehouse that you're already doing for analysis, you already have almost everything ready. You don't need to change a lot. We can use your existing data models as it is, bring it into the system, and start running this analysis. So that's a great news. You don't have to change your data at all, or very minimal, right?
Regarding scaling up data and data and handling
Yeah. So that's one of the strengths of the platform, because this is built on top of the Tellius architecture, which is built to handle like hundreds of gigs, if not terabytes of data running on a multi-scalar architecture. All the agents inherit those capabilities. So these agents can run using the same building blocks and infrastructure. So that means that we have very little or like no limitations on the size of data. If your data is in a system that is already scalable, we should be able to support that.
What you just saw there was the fact that there's a number of data sources on the left-hand side that were brought into that brand tracking agent that was kind of understanding, tracking TRX, NRX calls. The deviation detection agent was kind of running all those various types of, how, was there a change by brand? Was there a change in by territory, across different timeframes, kind of that multivariate analysis. And then on the far right-hand side, that remediation planner agent was the one that put together summarized recommendations. So that's kind of a visual approach to seeing what just happened in our platform. And that's just one of many agents that you get in the agent library that Vinod mentioned at the beginning. And we're continuing to add to these. And these are based on our growing knowledge of industry and departmental use cases as we work with some of the biggest customers, CPG, pharma, and tech companies in the world. So definitely encourage you to come check us out. And the last thing I wanted to share was just the fact that starting with us, starting your AI agent and agentic flows may sound a little daunting, but we make it really easy with a number of these out-of-the-box agents, the AI capabilities of our platform that accelerate you from ingesting data and modeling it to getting it into production with these agents for your end users. So I would encourage anyone to come check out our Kaya offering, which is our Gen AI and AI agent platform for analytics. We've previously had that chat GPT-like experience, that conversational experience. We're using Gen AI for summarization and data preparation and metadata tagging. And then, the latest thing here is our agents and flows. So wanted to thank everyone for attending this webinar. We'll share the deck and recording. Feel free to reach out to the product team, to Vinod and Rai, any questions you may have about this. We're really excited about it. I think it's going to add a lot of value to our customers and prospects.
If you want to try it out, reach out at tellius.com/agents. Feel free to ping one of us, and we'll be happy to jump on a call and show it's possible.
Thank you so much. Everyone have a great rest of the day.
Take care.